top story this hour, scholar says US sanction against Ethiopia could backfire and result in loss of an important partner in East Africa. And Russia and China reassure commitments to collaborate with Africa. A very warm welcome to Addis News Hour. I'm Solomon Danye. Thanks for joining me. New measures by USA against Ethiopia will seriously damage long-standing and bilateral relations between the two nations. The Minister of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Dina Mufti made the remark while giving the ministry's weekly press briefing on the current diplomatic engagements. In his briefing, Ambassador Dina focused on the visa restrictions on Ethiopian officials by the United States. The spokesperson stated that the visa restrictions and other related measures taken by the US government will seriously undermine the long-standing and important bilateral relationships between the two countries. According to Dina, the US administration to impose visa restrictions and other measures will also affect the constructive spirit of engagement between the two nations.
There were about 3 statements that we have come out with. One was on the recent American measure by also of restricting visa on Ethiopian officials. In that case, the statement clearly expresses the fact that the measure taken is not a reflection of the historic relations existing between the two countries. Ethiopia and the US have had 120 years of diplomatic relations. They have had close cooperations in fighting terrorism and working toward this regional peace and stability. And in this statement, it was clearly made clear in the official that Ethiopia does not accept and does not consider this as a statement that measures up to the level of the relationship between the two countries. Otherwise, citizens abroad have been carrying out various activities, of which the Defend Ethiopia Task Force in Europe can be mentioned. They have been carrying out protests, virtual protests, and they have been resisting what others have been doing against Ethiopia. And the slogan is "Hands off Ethiopia."
The latest restriction against Ethiopia by the US government is drawing criticisms from countless Ethiopians. Joining me now through our landline is Alamayo Harada, an economist by profession. Mr. Alamayo, thank you for having you.
Thank you for having me on your program.
Well, some say that the US pressure against Ethiopia is nothing but an attempt to install the TPLF's rogue regime back to the helm of federal power. Is the US speaking on behalf of the TPLF or the TPLF itself?
It seems so. It seems that America is acting on behalf of the TPLF. First of all, America's justification, the justification America put out to justify the current sanction, which comes as aid cut and visa restriction, is a bogus one. You see, they claim that there is a deliberate mass starvation in Tigray. They also claim that there is genocide. They also claim that there is ethnic cleansing. But they have never tried to bring any evidence against this. They haven't even heard evidence or information supplied out by World Food Program, Medicine Sans Frontier. These are organizations who know the truth on the ground. They just simply acted out of sheer hatred for Ethiopia. And it seems that they are trying to push Ethiopia's sovereignty, to invade Ethiopia's sovereignty on behalf of the TPLF. That's what I feel.
Well, apart from the travel ban, there are serious economic measures directly related to aid. How could Ethiopia withstand the repercussions?
Mind you, there will always be some kind of effect because of the aid cut. But as proclamation placed it out, they are not going to cut probably the humanitarian assistance, but they may cut the security assistance. And fortunately, Ethiopia is not very much interested in buying weapons from America, and now it is buying from Russia. The rest, you see, the financial side of the sanction, which could bring in the IMF and the World Bank, probably may affect the borrowing capacity of Ethiopia. Unfortunately, the world is not only American. There are other countries who will be ready to lend you some money. Anyway, there is some effect, but it cannot be whatever danger, whatever risk that comes out of this sanction, it is not greater than protecting our sovereignty. It's not at all. We have to be very clear about this.
Good. And finally, is it the whole U.S. Congress or some members with hidden TPLF agendas?
Mind you, currently the most important actors in this drama are people working for the State Department. The guy, Anthony Blinken, Susan Rice, who was his boss previously in the Obama administration, and some other guys. These guys, because of their bogus, evidence-less claims, they want to get same support out of the Congress and the Senate. And that's why the Democratic members of the Senate are somehow dancing to the tune of Susan Rice and Anthony Blinken. Believe me, if you take, for instance, the Republican Party is busy in Arizona to in fact remove Biden as a wrong president. They say that he's not elected; he's cheated. So the Republican Party, the majority of them are not even aware of what is happening in Ethiopia. Even though Anthony Blinken and Susan Rice and the guy who came last time, Jeffrey Feltman, try to somehow gang up the Senate and the Congress with their idea, I don't think this will be very much accepted 100% by the Senate or the Congress.
Okay. Mr. Alamayo, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
A British writer and analyst of politics and international relations, Tom Fowdy, says the current US restriction over Ethiopian officials indicates the interest for scrambling Africa. In an article featured on the Russia Today, he said the restriction could backfire and push Ethiopia closer to Beijing. Aula Teklemariam presents the article as follows.
The recent US visa restriction planned to be imposed over Ethiopian officials has become frontline news of the latest media reports. In an article featured on the Russia Today, a British writer and analyst of politics and international relations, Tom Fowdy, said the restriction implies plan to scramble Africa. According to the report, Washington has long viewed Ethiopia as a crucial partner in a key region. But the new sanction it has just imposed on the Addis Ababa government could backfire and push it closer to Beijing. It has been a weekend of extraordinary developments in Washington's relationship with Ethiopia, which have also been a contradictory nature. On Saturday, the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation secured a contract with a consortium of companies to fund the country's 5G network, on the condition of the money isn't used on Chinese telecoms giant Huawei and ZTE. Then the very next day, The State Department imposed sweeping sanctions over Ethiopia's government and army, as well as cutting international aid over what it deems a human rights abuse in the Tigray region, where Addis said it has been fighting a conflict with a rebel regional government. Bloomberg reports that these sanctions may broaden to include blocking IMF and World Bank lending to the country. The sanctions represent a potential turning point in US-Ethiopian relations, which have soared since the bloody Tigray conflict erupted last November. Washington has long viewed Ethiopia as a critical partner in East Africa, fearing that any destabilization in the region could help Islamic militant groups such as Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab stoke ethnic tensions and threaten freedom of movement in the Red Sea. How can one make sense of Washington's contradictory moves toward the country? Asked the report. President Biden has obviously been under some pressure from Congress to act on the conflict in Tigray. However, the situation is neatly illustrated by one word: China. The US wants to make inroads into Africa to thwart and compete with Beijing's cozy relationship with many countries on that continent. Washington sees its foreign policy through the lens of this rivalry. When US Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with leaders of Nigeria and Kenya recently, he warned African nations to be wary of Beijing to try to assert strategic dominance. Washington is turning to its classic modus operandi of simultaneously using sanctions as a leverage in order to influence Ethiopia's foreign policy, while using debt as a means to procure political moves in its favor and to strengthen the private sector, particularly against Beijing. The DFC, America's development bank, is one to watch. Established in 2019, it is an arm of the US government created to try to rival China's Belt and Road Initiative in investing in developing countries. However, it has a more explicit potential and ideological angle to it than Beijing's program, in that it demands compliance with an American strategic preferences in exchange for low-interest loans and forced privatizations to the benefit of US firms.
Lawrence Freeman, a renowned scholar and political economic analyst of Africa, states that restrictions by the US on Ethiopia will not only reverse decades of cooperation between the two nations, but potentially endanger the entire Horn of Africa and beyond. Kasan Chane has looked into the article as follows.
The State Department press a statement that the Biden administration has imposed wide-ranging restrictions on economic and security assistance to Ethiopia and will bring their defense trade control policy in line with them. Lawrence Freeman, political economic analyst for Africa, underscored. Accordingly, he said that, although not explicitly stated by Blinken, the United States will suspend $130 million of United States security assistance to Ethiopia that originally posed by the Trump administration. Freeman noted that multiple government sources report that the Biden administration is in the process of taking additional punitive measures against Ethiopia, including pressuring the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to hold back funds already designated for programs in Ethiopia. Additional United States sanctions have not been ruled out. The political economic analyst for Africa, Lawrence Freeman, says the report with the announcement of this bilateral and possible multilateral assaults against Ethiopia will not only reverse decades of cooperation between the two nations, but potentially could endanger the entire Horn of Africa and beyond. The statement further depicts that Ethiopia has played an indispensable role in providing security and stability in East Africa. This new United States posture towards Ethiopia meant to appease the international labor establishment and is reckless and perilous. These types of measures usually reversed for enemies of the United States are being implemented against a long-time trusted ally, he said. He accentuated that a nation that has vigorously collaborated with the United States under both Republican and Democratic presidents in fighting terrorism and violent extremism in the region has of a very great importance. Expressing the gravity of this abrupt policy shift by President Biden, Cameron Hudson of the Atlantic Council so sad to foreign policy. This is a major strategic shift in the own of Africa to go from an anchor state for United States interests to become a potential adversary to United States interests. He said this foolishness and lack of judgment by President Biden, Secretary of State Blinken, and the United States Congress can potentially lead to a calamity for Africa. Nothing since the disastrous decision by the Obama administration to overthrow the Libyan government in October 2011. According to nations in the Sahel, and millions of Africans living in that region are still suffering today from the misadventure by President Obama and his zealot regime change advisors who removed President Gaddafi from office. He also cited looking at Libya today and the effects almost a decade later on North Africa, noting attempts to weaken Ethiopia's through economic strangulation and political resolution. This turbulent period of Ethiopian society are downright dangerous and could cause severe harm for millions of Africans, he mentioned. This draconian assault against Ethiopia by the United States can potentially lead to a weakening of the Ethiopian nation by encouraging more regional nationalist attacks on the government, according to Lawrence Freeman, political economic analyst for Africa.
Ethiopian youth expressed dismay on the U.S. decision to impose visa restriction on Ethiopian officials in addition to its previous decisions to restrict economic and security assistance. As a sovereign nation, Ethiopia has a potential to resolve any internal issue by its own, they said, adding that US and other Western powers should not intervene in the country's internal matters. Jerusalem has compiled their views.
As an Ethiopian, as a woman, as a feminist, as a young person, I am very disappointed in those involvements that the United States is making to dominate and manipulate our political system or our economic system in the country. We are a sovereign country. We are independent. We don't need someone else to come and meddle in. We can fix what is causing us problem in our country. We can fix it. We can fix it together. I don't like how they are trying to politicize everything into their own benefit. I wish they could help us genuinely from a genuine side, but they are trying to politicize everything so that they can take advantage of our separation, our disturbance, and our instability. So I very much strongly disagree with what the United States is doing to my country. We are strong as Ethiopians. We didn't need Americans. We didn't need the Western people to come and create this solution for us. We are enough.
The sanctions that was imposed by the American government, I think that's unconsiderate and sorry for the word that I'm using, ridiculous for that matter. As we know, one sovereign country can exercise any rule of law in the country and good governance, what is possible for the government to exercise any restrictions on the sovereign country. So in that in mind, if history has taught us anything, that our forefathers, that we should stick together and defend our sovereign country.
Until today, Ethiopians have been solving their own problems internally. So today, we don't even need any external forces to enter in our internal problems. So as a sovereign country, what America did is not right. So I believe America will be aware of this and will learn from her mistake, and Ethiopian sovereignty will always remain the same.
They are trying to provide, visa restrictions is something that's very unfortunate from a country which has a long, business relationship and investment relationship with Ethiopia. So I really hope that they will, cancel the decisions that they made. And instead, I would suggest, or I would really advise the United States of America to provide, positive and, peaceful kind of solutions instead of providing restriction, because the restriction doesn't really make doesn't make any solutions or doesn't bring anything other than negative consequences.
We should understand whatever happening in our country, that shouldn't be considered as something that could seize us from existing as a country. To continue as a country is something different, something that is in other boundary. but problems might occur, economical, political, many religious problems might occur in a country. Different pressures might occur from other powerful countries and so on. That is something that could be dealt politically and in different terms. But that shouldn't be considered as something that is a threat to exist as a country. We have been a country so long, we are and we will be.
Politicians say Ethiopians must learn from Cuba how to curb the arm-twisting tactics the US is playing against Ethiopia. The current concern of US on Ethiopia has nothing to do with human rights or democracy. Sintayo Tamrat report.
Following the recent statement of the US Senate on Ethiopia, Ethiopians and their friends are reacting to the statement. Some seasoned politicians of Ethiopia have also reflected on the statement, dubbing it unfair and irrational. The pressure is partly because of the 30-year-long well-established global network of the TPLF people. It is this group that has been aggressively working to exaggerate facts on the ground and propagating crafted facts about the situation in Ethiopia.
In the course of almost 3 decades in power, the TPLF have built some support, among individuals and groups in the Western countries. And now that these groups, these individuals, have been very active in maligning our government and to propagate TPLF's position on the issue. These issues were taken out of context, they were exaggerated.
Demo advises Ethiopians to properly deal with US arm-twisting tactics against their country by taking lessons from Cuba.
Ethiopians, I think, must realize this, close ranks, and be strong internally. If we are united, if we are strong, we can resist these pressures. The best example is Cuba. Cuba, for in fact more than 60 years, managed to live 90 miles from the United States with all sorts of pressures, with all sorts of sanctions, and survived because it was internally stable, it was internally strong, internally united. So that's the only way we can, I think, resist these pressures.
The current concern of the US with Ethiopia has nothing to do with human rights and democracy. The US is rather scared of Ethiopia's current position to detach itself from being subservient government.
They are willing to stand with nations that has nothing to do with the standards of democracy and human rights they profess in their country. And so we know their interest in Ethiopia has nothing to do with defending human rights or democracy or justice. Their problem with Ethiopia now is Ethiopia is in a trajectory line, political line, that would probably liberate it from being an appendage to the West.
But the past 27 years was the regime of servant government to the West, they said.
In the past 27 years, the regime in Ethiopia has been so subservient to Western regimes, especially the US and the UK, and at the cost of Ethiopia losing its international status.
The government of Ethiopia shall mobilize the diaspora to join hands as usual in voicing Ethiopians and their government's concern and their sovereignty to the global community.
Hi, my name is Brooke Thomas Haftuend. I was born and raised in the UK. I do not like what the Egyptians are doing to Ethiopia. This is my dam.
It's my dam.
It's my dam. It's my dam. It's my dam.
It is my dam.
It is my dam. It's my dam.
This is Addis News Hour. Filling, timing and operations of dams can catalyze most of the conflicts associated to a dam's lifetime, which can be mitigated by adaptive solutions that respond to medium to long-term hydroclimatic fluctuations. An article featured on Research Square states that decades of sustainable dam planning efforts are focused on containing dam impacts in regime conditions when the dam is fully filled and operational, overlooking potential disputes raised by the filling phase. Hence, it has argued that filling, timing and operation can catalyze most of the conflicts associated to a dam's lifetime, which can be mitigated by adaptive solutions that respond to medium to long-term hydroclimatic fluctuations. Its retrospective analysis of the contested recent filling of Gibe 3 in the Omo Turkana Basin provides quantitative evidence of the benefits generated by adaptive filling strategies, attaining levels of hydropower production comparable with the historical ones while curtailing the negative impacts to downstream users. Ethiopia is set to conduct the second filling of its mega dam this rainy season. Welcome back. You're watching Addis News Hour. In his message on the occasion of the Africa Day 2021, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has highlighted challenges in nation's path to prosperity. The road to a new prosperous nation is bound to have its own rough patch, the Premier underlined. The Premier has recalled the great achievements of Ababa Bikila, the first black African Olympic gold medalist, paraphrasing, even the smoothest of roads will give blisters to the barefoot. What matters is the clarity of vision and barefooted determination to stay on the course. Africa Day 2021 is being celebrated across the world, commemorating the founding of the Organization of African Unity on May 25, 1963. Africa Day 2021 is being celebrated across the world, commemorating the founding of the Organization of African Unity on May 25, 1963. Different initiatives here in Ethiopia and in the African region that has been working on youth and women have celebrated African Day with various assortments. Participants of the event urged the youth to remember the sacrifices of African forefathers for today's Africa through protecting African unity.
The sacrifice made by our forefathers, even to come together for them to fight the colonial master, it is something extraordinary that is done by them in their time. They bring us a unity that most of it we need to do all the parts. So for me, our forefathers, they did the best. They did the role. But what is our role now? Because they paved the way, they show us this is the direction that we need to follow. But if we sleep, we will lose the direction. So we always remember them with a great role they played. But to make them happy wherever they are, we need to go ahead with the journey that they started. So our focus is how can we continue the unity that they project for Africa.
Africans, especially Ethiopians' role towards constructing or founding the Organization of African Union, lately the African Union, and also other continental issues is remarkable when you come to the role of Ethiopia. But this shouldn't be found only on the history book of high school and preparatory students. This should be repeated again. We Ethiopians should make an history, and we do have an opportunity to do that at this current time. For this, the role of the youth is remarkable, and it is wide. So I'm proud of to be African, to be Ethiopian. So we use this in Ethiopia, also in Africa as well. Should use the history not only to tell and to get an admiration or something else, but to use it as an energy to live more than that, so we can.
And Africa is the first continent who has a young age, like at the age of 15 or 16 age groups. So these young age groups they have a lot of energy for the coming 15 years. So if you're using those resources properly and wisely, and to participate in politics and to participate in economical aspect and different aspects. So if we then those African youth, we have to product, and we see the Africa we want. So
the event also highlighted that Ethiopia is giving priority to the youth and women in all aspects.
Africa is richly endowed with vast human and natural resources, which is harnessed in accordance with our vision. Agenda 63 will improve the livelihoods of the people of Africa through the rapid eradication of hunger, poverty, and disease. Now, Ethiopia has the 10 years development plan. It says Ethiopia's prosperity and making Ethiopia a beacon of African prosperity.
The Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, also stated that the youth should be pioneers to achieve Agenda 2063 and the 2030 goals of SDGs.
According to Agenda 2063 and even the Global Sustainable Development Goals, it expects a lot, and there's a lot of expectations of current political leaders to advance to advance and empower the youth. So I think Africa has to use the youth both to leap itself into the 21st or 21st century and anchor its development. Without the youth, I think we are going nowhere.